I'm delighted that so many of you are here today. Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Easter, and I have the greatest pleasure in introducing Dr. Tim Haggit, who has come from the University of Auckland, Lee Marine Lab, and eCoast, who was in charge of our survey. Before I totally begin, I just want to say we have got experience in marine reserves here, and they are filming things. If anyone is uncomfortable with being filmed, do just, make it, none of this will be going any beyond our community forums, but just if you have any issues with that, please let us know. I'm just amazed that there are so many of you here. The genesis of this, rather than babbling on, I'm going to hand it over to Tim, but the genesis was a marine survey was commissioned for the waters around Rakino Island, thanks to Foundation North, who gave us a grant, and the findings, this is the first ever survey of its kind around this island, and so this is a baseline scientific survey to give us data for the potential to watch change, whether it's degrading, improving, staying the same. And Tim, who I've had the great pleasure to get to know over this, and also I sometimes interview him for stories, has the most wonderful, incredible knowledge, and yet when I ask him really basic questions, he never makes me feel dumb. In fact, he helps me understand some of the most complex stuff. So I'm delighted, and I know that he's going to do the same with you. So Tim, welcome.
Tim Haggit for the Ingoa. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming along today. And thanks for that introduction, Elizabeth. I only can answer basic questions, so that's probably why I answer once. But yeah, just for today, I just want to go through. I promise there won't be any graphs. Okay. We did a report, and you can get into more detail into that. I just want to give you a bit of an overview of where we are at this point in time, and that's all a baseline survey can do, and then we can work together in ways of how we might improve or do things differently for your area here. Okay. But before we get into that, what I'd really like to do, because I came in, did a survey, and left. I'm a blow-in, really. This is your place, and I really want to capture today what your values are in terms of the marine environment, the moana out there. Okay, so how we're going to do that is just Elizabeth's going to write on the whiteboard, and if everyone's happy, we'll take a photo of that. Okay, because that could be also our baseline in terms of moving forward. Okay, so I'm just putting it over to you now. Just whatever it is about the marine environment that you value, cherish, want for the future maybe, and we'll just capture that now. So even have a time to think, a couple of minutes to think, and then we'll...
More fish.
Okay, there's the first one, more fish.
And I'm going to write down something Les said to someone in passing, that he just wants everything to stay the same.
Stay gold, Les. Same as when.
Before Les got here.
I'm sure he said about his knees too.
Okay, I'm going to say restoration of ecosystem.
I want to feel this positive change.
My understanding of a benthic survey is that you look for the place with the highest level of diversity, because that's the best place to start. Is that a correct overview?
Yeah, that's one of the...
Yeah, so leaving from that, what I was hoping is that we could incorporate whatever we come up with the fantastic work that the Reuters are doing, and maybe form an ecological linkage zone between our two reserves. How does that sound?
Like it.
Cool.
Speaking of them.
Speaking
of
the noise.
Someone close the door.
Sorry, sold out. Come on in. Oh, you brave people. Oh, this is so cool, because I'd like over the road, our neighbouring Motu on the noises, Sue Rota, and her brother Rod.
Bit damp.
Do you want to get inside into a nice snug spot?
Oh, no, look, we're
Okay.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lovely. And for those of you who don't know, the Norwood family have been working tirelessly to push for protection on land, on sea. They're doing science out there that would make Oxford and Cambridge put to shame. They're so fully engaged, it's amazing. So thank you for coming, this is really exciting. Right, we're finding out what Rakino's community wants, and so far we have got more fish. We want it to stay the same, says Les. We want restoration of the ecosystem, positive change and ecological protection corridors.
I'd like to see 30% marine reserves.
Yes.
A marine reserve.
A marine reserve.
Like Goat Island.
Yeah,
That's why we want to have something like Goat Island. How long would that take? Well, these people here, they have an example over here, right? You're working on it.
One thing also too that somebody put on the Facebook, Amanda Frecker,
Yeah.
she said that she still wanted to maintain that there would be places that local, people could fish still off the beach, so that it wasn't that people were completely excluded from doing the things they love. And I think that does resonate with a lot of people. So
We're not talking about an all or nothing
Yeah.
situation. We're going to optimise what little bit that we can and make the best of that, and not alienate any of the other people on the island.
Except Les.
Except Les. And Mike.
And the other thing too is that in order to make people who are very passionate for their fishing, if it helps you to embrace marine protection, think of it as a fish pump. You know, if it's extraction is your goal, that is maybe sounds a bit right.
Yeah, that explains the logic of the whole purpose of marine reserves,
Yes.
publicity campaigns. It's huge resistance.
It'd be good to understand the stages to go through.
Oh, complex. Yes.
That's really good.
So one of the things I value about Rakino is the pest-free status that we've managed to get to on land, and I just want to recognise the relationship between that on land and sea relationship, that circle of life, and what the on land stuff does below the waterline.
Pest-free status underwater.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother ballgame, but yeah, absolutely. The relationship between what not having rats does for the undersea life is,
And having habitat for sea birds, because they fertilise the moana at the same
that whole
time.
stuff, the guano, all of that, yeah.
Oh, I like this.
So it's recognising that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think we're not even close to understanding what a pest-free environment under the water looks like and feels like, but we've kind of got some knowledge about what it looks like on land. And yeah.
So increase marine diversity.
Yeah.
Years again.
Increased bio or marine?
Marine.
Marine, okay.
Okay, I think that's a really good starting point, and we can add to this at the end, Thanks, Elizabeth.
Should we take a picture?
Yeah, take a picture of that.
Hey Tim, what's with the scar?
What story would you like?
It's actually a
I'll just
tattoo.
put it on for today.
You're learning how to makeup.
Yeah, there was a beginner's surfboard in the first place, so well needed at this time. Yeah. No, it's great to be able to make it. Oh, the other thing we didn't mention was that the first time we planned to come here and talk, America's Cup was on, so it was the second time COVID. So third time, there's no way a cyclone was going to stop. It's really thanks to Lorna and the EMR team for driving it. So, thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll move this out of the way. The first time we ever brought a whiteboard to an island too.
Next time I can probably find you a slightly smaller one.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Oh no, we'll have more values next week.
Yeah.
I hope everyone can see that big screen in some shape or form. That's all we've got to work with
Thank you,
today.
Mark, too, for
Yeah,
coming to
thank you. But really, I just want to give you an overview of what we did. So in March 2000, we came here for 3 days and surveyed 8 sites around, we have to. The way we have to do science is that we kind of go in with a bit of intuition, but we have to randomly select sites just so that we're not. We've got to be pretty objective about what we do. I came in here with no preconceived ideas. I just wanted to capture snapshot in time. What does the benthic community, so the bottom, the rocky reef and parts of the soft sediment look like? And what we do is, because we are located in the Gulf, we can use other surveys that we've done to actually put this area in context. Okay, so part of our other work we do is that we survey marine reserves. So we do up at Lee, Goat Island, or Te Hauri Amaki. Hopefully it's going to be called that in the future, because that is the name of the island. Tawharanui, and we also do Hahei. Okay, and what they do is they kind of give us an indication of what happens when you, to some degree, remove extraction. Okay, I'm not saying they're completely protected, because there's fishing that occurs on the boundary that actually has an edge effect that goes into the reserves. Okay, hence why we've been campaigning to make Lee Reserve a lot bigger. Okay, we can go into that in more detail. Okay, how we do it, so the main aim is to collect baseline information, okay, and then we can, this is, what it looks like to us is plots, okay, lots of plots, lots of numbers. We look at how communities, what type of communities exist together, what don't, okay. We survey shallow, mid-depth down to deep, so we can see change in zonation patterns underwater, okay, and then basically with our quadrats, which is here, we sit and count things and measure things, okay. So we use a 1 metre squared area, okay, and we try and count and size everything in there, all right. A lot of time I'm on the bottom, but it can be very peaceful, right. There's no cell phones or anything like that going on, all right. And the other thing we do, as I mentioned, we're going to place it in the context of the wider Gulf, is that we do fish surveys. So we run out transects and count fish, and we also do lobster surveys. Okay. I just want to bring us to the state of the Gulf right now. I don't know how many of you read the State of the Gulf report done by the Hauraki Gulf Forum. Okay. Doesn't paint too rosy picture of the Gulf, but there's always hope, right? We can turn around a lot of the things if we have the time, if we put the energy in, if we care enough. Okay, so the biggest threats to the Gulf, the top 5 are climate change, ocean acidification, okay, fishing, sedimentation and pollution. All right, so just hold those top 5 today, because we want to go back to them at the end of the talk. All right. This is just how we survey Golda, or the rock lobster. I can send everyone a copy of this talk too if you want to go back to it and see it in more detail. So we basically go into the dens when we can find them. Okay, we measure them, we size them, we sex them, and we can tell how many are together in a den. All right. And we've been doing that up around the Lee coastline for the last 25 years. Okay. The Lee Marine Reserve, when we started, it would take us 3 to 4 weeks to do the reserve. Okay, now we can do it in a week, and it's not because we've got faster at it. All right, it reflects the increase that's happened, and now there's been a decline also in a reserve. Okay, And that's the edge effect that I just mentioned previously. Okay. This is what a healthy, might be hard to see, but this is what a healthy population looks like. Okay. There's 62 crays in that little piece there. Okay. All right. Okay. I haven't seen it then like that. That's in the Lee Marine Reserve. I haven't seen one like that for a long time, so it's quite encouraging. Okay. Really annoying to count. Right? Pretty difficult to count. We can't often sex them like that because there's just too many, right? But that's really, really good to see. The other thing we see, okay, is big males out in the open, okay, trying to get a mate, okay. So there's a big male here, there's a female under the rocks, and you're just swimming along doing your survey, and there they are. There's one there, there's one there, and they're quite aggressive too, you know. He's coming up to say hello. So how it works is that the females choose the male, okay? And then once the males have mated, they then move away, okay? Together, okay? And they move off the reef and they go onto the sand flats to feed. The females all kind of come together and the eggs will develop, okay, over a few months. So they mate in the autumn, okay? And then around about September or October, the females all go down to the deep edge of the reef together. Just before dawn, they release the larvae up to the water column, okay? It's quite romantic, really. And then the larvae will drift on the water column for 18 months and they develop, okay? And then they'll eventually settle, okay? So that's sort of like the life cycle, or part of the life cycle. So see, they come out to challenge you because they're in that mode where I'm trying to get a mate and you're coming into my territory and things like that. So, okay, but here's the kicker, right? We only see this in marine reserves along this coastline, okay? When we go outside and survey, we don't see that, okay? And we're predominantly just measuring small, barely legal individuals. Okay? I lied. I have put a graph in here. Okay. Right, can you see the grey bars? Yeah. Okay, this is size, all right, along the bottom. Here, this part here is division between, so all of the ones this side are legal, okay? So the grey ones are all from the marine reserves, Lee, Tafanui, Hahe. The red is from equivalent areas outside that we survey, okay? So you can see the difference, hopefully, that big ones, and only a few legal ones outside, okay? The egg production inside the reserves is 15 to 30 times higher, okay? And that's pretty conservative. And a paper came out, and I'll just read this to you, because you know how we saw the mating, or that male trying to find a female, there's all of that selection that goes on, okay? And so like basically the weaker ones or the older ones get weeded out because they can't compete for the mate, okay? And so it says the mating systems of overfished lobster populations, which is here, now persist as a scrambled competition, okay, for mates among barely mature individuals. So the mating is happening in individuals that aren't really mature yet, you know. And so what does that mean long term? Populations will get weaker and weaker and weaker, okay. Snapper. Okay, big one there. Yep, good to eat. This one about 60 years old, 80 centimetres. Okay, the egg production of one of those. Can anyone tell me how many just legal ones you'd need to have the same reproductive output? 20. Any advancements on 20? It's a bit like an auction. It's about 35 to 38. Okay, so generally the bigger they are, the more eggs. Okay, but it's not just we're talking about volume, it's also the strength of them, okay? The fitness of those eggs is a lot higher in the bigger ones.
Should we be throwing back the big ones?
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, and that's a really, really, really good point, right? We have a lower limit, why don't we have upper limits?
Yeah.
And it's successful DNA as well. If they've lasted that long, they're passing
Yeah,
that
they're
DNA
winners.
on.
Yeah.
They were smart.
Yeah. Totally. Yep. Oh, and the other point too is that in that lobster den with all of the, you know, crammed in there, there's a social structure that happens. Okay. And that's really, really important. When you start fishing down things to really, really low levels, you lose that. Okay. And the last thing really I want to talk about is the role of these in the ecosystem. So this is from Hahei Marine Reserve. Early in the morning, can you see that the big male lobster there's got a kinner? Okay. When we do the lobster surveys, we always find freshly eaten kinner in the dens, generally. Okay. So they have a huge role in predating on things like kinner. They do. Well, they're actually quite generalist feeders, to be honest, but they love a good kinner at the right time. Now what happens is when you lose that top-down predation, okay, this is what we get. And this is taken down what we call a grazing front, okay? So when kinner have free rein because they've got no predation, they can do whatever they want, basically. And often they'll get together and move in a wave down the reef and grazing on the kelp. There's a bit of a bite mark out of one of the spikes of the clonia. That's a clonia radiata there. That snapping, you can hear snapping shrimp in the mouth parts as they graze along the reef. There's a couple clustered here. So you can see these ones here have decimated this kelp here. It's quite an amazing sight to see, really, and it's really distinct, right? Because they just move down like that. That used to be a lush kelp.
So the discussion about when you see a kinner kill it, kind of thing, which I don't do, but I have heard it a lot these holidays actually. Is that what should we be doing that? Is that something that we should be actively? Or do they have a role?
Yeah, they have a role. They're part of the ecosystem, and that's an indicator that things are out of balance.
Out of whack.
Yeah,
because it's definitely around Rakina compared to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The kinner are profuse. You're standing on them all the time. They're, you know, down by Woody Bay. They're just everywhere. They weren't like that 20 years ago.
Yeah, common problem. Yeah. Okay, so. This is Te Haori Amaki, or Goat Island. Can you see that there? Can you see there's little light patches around it? Yeah. Okay, that's 1975 when it became a marine reserve. Okay. When we went back, and there was a lot of kinner barrens, just like we've seen on that video, as a lot of you might be familiar with. Okay. When we got an increase in snapper, and particularly lobster. Okay. Fast forward, these areas have turned back to clonia forest or kelp forest. Okay, so there's two things that happen, right? The lobster and the snapper predate on them, but they also create what we call a landscape of fear for the kinner. So the kinner don't really want to come out too far and graze. Okay, and if they're not doing that, then you've got opportunities for kelp to, you know, recruit and regenerate. Yeah. And the other thing, I took this yesterday. This is just on the beach, actually, where Lorna takes all the, her school groups and snorkeling off this beach here. And what do we see washing up on the beach? Kelp, right? The sea just needs to sneeze a little bit around here and you get kelp washing up. You know, there's so much of it, okay? And this is a really, really important. If we go back to that land to sea linkage, right? Okay.
That's where all the birds feed and the insects that live on the kelp. So,
that's right. Yeah. Okay, so that's one thing that we noticed, and we're starting to actually look at how much is washed up relative to historically, you know. The other thing that when you have sways of kelp like that, if you've got wave action, it buffers the effects of wave action, right? Because it's hitting a cushion. Okay. This will actually often come back and go back into the system, and juvenile fish will actually hide in amongst it. Okay, as it starts to break down. Okay, so I've got a question. Ben, what is the relationship between? I got you guys to think about this. Okay, and I'm not drawing too long a bow, hopefully. A lobster and a kiwi bird. Okay, and we'll go back and answer this right at the end. Okay, but I'm just putting it out there. What is the relationship?
Yeah, critically endangered stuff.
Apart from that,
Neither of them
like
can
that.
fly.
Okay.
Tastes good.
Talk over.
No.
Okay, write those down.
So what was the right answer?
We'll do it at the end. Okay. Okay. So on to your rohi. Okay. So I'm just going to go. I'm not going to show the graphs as I said. Okay, because it's. I don't want to put you to sleep too much. But there is a technical report that goes with this, okay, that we will use and we can build on. You know, we only surveyed 8 sites, and I don't want you to think that, oh, that's all they've done. We want to build on this through time, right? Okay. So I'm just showing here Northwest Point and Māori Garden Bay. In the shallows, you know, you have a lot of mixed algae, and you'll see them fringing the reef, and they go down to about 2 to 3 metres. Okay. Then when we get deeper, okay, we do get nice stands of Aclonia. Okay. Out around Northeast Point, like towards the north. Okay. And there's also a lot of fish. There's blue mau, sweet, a few leather jackets. You know, common to this area. Okay. This is just a transit line here. As we come further down here, we start getting the carpa filum, and that often probably washes up on the beach. So Clonia is a true kelp. This is what we call Fucalian algae, and it gets quite dense, and there's often sediment laying in the fronds there. Okay. It was quite turbid when we were doing the survey. I don't know, some of your long-time residents might have noticed decreasing water clarity and things like that through time. Okay. And then really prominent throughout, like you were alluding to, is the urchin barrens, right? So you can kind of see the contrast, right? You've got kelp, you've got rockweeds, and then you've got the urchin barrens. Okay. A lot of these, when you have high densities of urchins on the reef and they've grazed the kelp, there's not much for them to eat. Okay. So then that translates to often they're quite small, and also they're no good to eat, right? Because they can't really make the roe that they need to if there's not the food. Okay. Unless you get like, you know, in spring you get like this, the annuals come out, like pop out like kind of daffodils. That's the only analogy I can think of land at the moment. Sorry, but you know, you've got the reds, you've got the greens, and they actually come into the barrens habitats, and they will fatten. Okay, but for much of the year they're quite skinny. Okay. One thing too is that we look at the kelp, but we look at what's on the bottom. Okay, and around the northern part of the island, when you start moving that kelp away, you notice there's really high biodiversity, numbers of different things under the kelp. Okay, because it actually protects and creates a bit of a safe haven for other species. Okay, so there's sponges. We have corals, ascidians, all manner of things really. Gastropods, that's Callia spongia, which is like a finger sponge. Okay, so there's really high diversity, okay, but it's really limited, okay, and that relates